Hey, this is Ryan. I'm one of the hosts of the People's Podcast of Austin. This is a show all about how you can get involved in making the city of Austin a better place and beyond Austin as well. We'll talk about setting up a similar podcast and a similar organization in whatever city you live in, so it's not just Austin. And I'm joined today by my co-hosts, Sass and Herbie, who work with the Movement for a People's Party. And today on the show, we're going to be talking to the great Nick Brana. He's one of the founders of the Movement for a People's Party, which you can find at peoplesparty.org. And we're going to be having a really great conversation with him here in 1 second. And also subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you get podcasts. And without further ado, here's our interview with founder of the Movement for a People's Party, Nick Brana.
Okay, so I'll just go into, kind of how MPP came about and what it is. And so as the Movement for a People's Party, basically we started in 2017, came out of the Bernie Sanders campaign. I worked on the campaign as the National Political Outreach Coordinator, reaching out to the superdelegates for Bernie, and then helped him found Our Revolution as its electoral manager. And my experience and the experience of so many thousands of others on that campaign really led us to the conclusion that you can't reform the Democratic Party, and that in fact we need to do what the majority of Americans, an increasing majority of Americans, are calling for, which is to form a major new party that is free of corporate money and that is accountable to the people. And since then, we have just, exploded, particularly after the 2020 election fiasco with another rigged primary against Bernie Sanders. And in those last few months, we've held the Rally for a People's Stimulus, where we went to more than 50 members of Congress's homes and demanded a people's stimulus with a basic income, Medicare for all, defunding the police, and so much more. And then just a month ago, we hosted, of course, the People's Convention with Senator Nina Turner, Dr. Cornel West, Jesse Ventura, Danny Glover, Jimmy Dore, Marianne Williamson, so many of kind of the greatest independent thinkers in the U.S. who are now coming together in this really exciting kind of development to form a major new party. And also happy to say we're up to 115,000 members. As all of us. So the movement's taking off kind of like a rocket now, and we're forming hubs and state parties all over the place, and it's a beautiful thing to watch because it's so overdue.
Yeah, totally. I wanted to bring up, I watched the you guys post-debate talk that you did, which was like the actual debate was like kind of made me depressed and sad and kind of anxious and annoyed, and then watching your
Very
guys'
anxious.
thing was and then your guys' thing was like a palate cleanser, like just brought me back to hopefulness. So I thank you for that. But I wanted to ask a couple questions from that also. And one of the things you were just talking about, which I think is one of the things that's still on my mind and a lot of people's mind, which is the Bernie Sanders campaign and the sort of like coordinated attack against him. And you brought up the Democratic Party's attack, which was bizarre to watch. Everybody kind of like Voltroning together, Power Rangers coming together to thwart him, but also like the media attack, which is something I really wanted to talk to you about, because watching MSNBC and the New York Times and all that stuff around that time I was like, wow, like things are really coordinated against this guy not having any power. So that's another side of this. Like, how do you deal with all this stuff going against any kind of change?
It's true, but those are not the media. Obviously, is a part of the same capitalist class. It's part of the same people who own the media, own the parties. It's all Wall Street. It's all these big corporations. You've seen this over the last 30 years, this incredible consolidation in the media from 50 companies that used to have 90% ownership in the US down to 5 companies now that own 90% of the television stations, the radio stations, the movie theaters, the TV channels. So just an incredible corporate consolidation. But what we've seen, that's kind of the bad news. The good news is that despite their best efforts to try to contain, the political revolution, to try to contain, ideas that our government isn't working for us, you still see explosive growth of kind of channels that and commentators that are telling you the truth. And so, like, Jimmy Dore is a fantastic example. His channel since 2016 has just completely exploded. More than 800,000 subscribers now, just hundreds of millions of views. There's another one, Rising, put on by The Hill, actually, which is very interesting because they're not necessarily independent, but still there's a show. It's like they've kind of recognized, it's like people want to hear this, and so that show has blown up as well. That's kind of approaching 800,000 subscribers. Hundreds of millions of views also. And then we have social media and we have the internet. So there hasn't been kind of an attempt at a major new party, like ours, this kind of movement-driven major new party in the time of the internet. And what we're seeing in other countries is that the internet is actually fueling a kind of revitalization in party politics across Europe and across Latin America, where new digitally savvy parties are displacing their center-left parties in those countries. Because even though they have more multi-party systems, it generally tends to boil down to one center-right and one center-left party. And so that's also a very exciting development that has really good implications for us about the internet's power and our power to use social media, use independent media, and develop our own kind of peer-to-peer communication capacities to get around that corporate media blockade.
Yeah, totally. I'm glad you brought up The Hill because I feel like the whole premise of The Hill is like both parties are terrible. Like you might be a right-wing person or you might be on the left, like Crystal Ball, but both are they'll acknowledge both are terrible. Like I don't agree with the right-wing host on that show about anything, but I think that's why it's popular. Everybody can agree, yeah, we don't like either of these parties, which is sort of hilarious if you think about it. Okay,
Sagar's great. Sagar
Yeah.
and Jetty, love
Yeah.
him, man. He's like he brings a freshness to like the conservative viewpoint. It's like, look, we still want to like have better lives. Like like what is this like ridiculous? Like we're not gonna give people money. Like you're in the only time in your entire political career is the other party encouraging you to spend money. Like why are you doing this?
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's good that they're at least acknowledging like there's something wrong and there needs to be a more revolutionary change or whatever. Okay,
It's a really interesting show actually because I feel like its success is a really good signal to us because it's essentially in its own way doing a version of what we're doing. Is we're saying this isn't just a party for former Democrats. It's not just a party for former Republicans, independents. We're saying this is a party for working people, for everyone. And that's what they do on that show is they say, we've been carved up and divided as the working class into these different boxes and these different, ideological, groups. But really, that's not the defining political paradigm in our time. Now it really is the oligarchs versus everyone else. And they reflect that in their show. And I feel like that's what we're reflecting as a party. And so their success actually, I think, bodes really well for what we're doing.
totally. Do you think of it, because the way that I think of the MPP is like there really is one party, right? Like right now, there's one party. There's a kind of theatrical thing that goes on, and we could talk about this with the debate, but it's really like it's theatrical. It's pretend. It's allowing the entire apparatus to shift to the right because the far right party is like, they push the other side to the right too. Do you think of it that way as like there's one party right now, there needs to be another party at least?
Oh yeah, without question. One of the things that made me leave the Democratic Party is when, after working on Bernie's campaign, I started to realize that at every level, basically, the two parties just functioned as subsidiaries of Wall Street, of like one parent company, and you couldn't even separate them necessarily. You can't understand them individually. They work as this kind of like symbiotic being to take the country to the right together. It's like every time there's a Republican president and a Republican Congress, they lurch us to the right. You see the Republicans, reduce taxes, start new wars, expand surveillance, dismantle the New Deal in some way, which Clinton basically finished off, expand mass incarceration, and blow up the military budget. And then what you see when the Democrats come in, though, this is what gives away the game, is that when the Democrats come in, you would think that the Democrats are going to they're going to take us back to the left or something like that, or they're going to, make the changes in the other direction. But, with Jimmy Carter, Obama, Clinton, you see the same pattern. And that is that instead they come in and, and this applies to Congress as well, Democratic Congress and held chambers, and they just normalize or expand all of the changes that the Republicans made. And so that really gives it away, that it's they're working in tandem to move the country as a whole to the right.
Okay, I this is a little bit of a diversion, but you brought up the sort of New Deal coalition thing, which is to me a really fascinating historical subject. I really like. I'm glad you said that because it popped back into my mind to ask you this. So, like the New Deal coalition thing was basically, in my dumb understanding of it, was sort of like people were able to work together on sort of material needs stuff for a while, and they were able to put sort of the secondary politics aside for a while because they were like, no, this kind of works out. This kind of benefits me materially. And then you had Nixon and people like this were able to figure out like, hey, if we kind of work in some racist politics, it can kind of divide that up. So what, like, this is another challenge. Like, there are a lot of people who are really wrapped up in this like racist, xenophobic politics, and they're able to, it seems to me, vote totally against their own interests and the interest of the country as a whole because of this like attachment to these dog whistles and all this stuff. How do you get past that too? That's like a whole nother hurdle, right?
It is. It's one of the biggest challenges that we face. But I think one of the most fundamental things about this dynamic to understand is that where did Trump come from? Trump was a reflection of Obama's failure to do anything different from Bush. He was a faction that it was the fact that Obama normalized the tax cuts, kept all the wars going, too big to fail, too big to jail, all that, highest inequality since the Gilded Age. That's why we got Trump. And so, when people are talking about what is it that makes this country susceptible or to essentially a racist, xenophobic, vulgar, sexist message like Donald Trump brought up. And it is the fact that we're not addressing people's basic livelihoods. And so people are getting so, things like where they get their health care, their ability to, just have stable housing, afford food now during the pandemic. And the lack of those things is basically making the ground fertile for fascism in this country. And it's turning people towards, people are so desperate and fed up with the system that we have now that they're saying, Hillary Clinton, like elder stateswoman, embodiment of the establishment, like I'm so don't want to vote for that. Joe Biden too. I mean, as they're like, everybody wants change, and the Democrats are putting up the guy who was the vice president in the last administration. And, but this idea that, we can kind of address issues like systemic racism, which of course we have to, like immigration reform, or that we can reduce xenophobia, sexism, the racism, this kind of attack on Mexico that the president has kind of waged since he was, elected and before, just by focusing on those issues, which is what the Democrats do, that's false. That's actually what's creating the crises in those issues in so many ways, in social issues, in cultural issues, is the fact that we're not addressing people, the questions of people's basic economic survival, and it's making people susceptible to a message like Trump that comes about and says the problem's the immigrants, the problem is women, the problem is people of color. And until we address that, that's only going to get worse. And the neoliberal approach of, only like this kind of, performative identity politics, like that is actually ironically exacerbating the crisis on those issues and on economic issues.
Yeah, because it's fake. They don't want to address any of the underlying issues at all for that. I don't want to dominate this thing. Herbie or Sass, do you have anything you wanted to add at this point? Because I have.
Yeah, I want to come back to the discussion about Democrats and Republicans. We're basically one party, and we have third parties in this country already, right? So, and they're not very successful against the Democrats and Republicans. So, and I know you've heard this question 100 times, Nick, but what makes MPP different? Why are we not going to go the way of the Greens?
Because we're doing a number of things differently. One of them is something that we already touched on, and that is that we're not just trying to build kind of, a party for the left necessarily. We're trying to build a party for working people. And so we're, unlike Hillary Clinton, who said 47% or whatever, half the country is deplorable. It's like, so you start off you write off half the country. There's like something deficient in the voters, in the American people, we're not doing that. We're saying, no, we're actually recognizing the sociological reality that people who vote for Trump, the majority of them, some of them are racist, some of them are sexist, but there's also millions of them who they're just fed up with the way that things are working. They voted for Obama. They spend election after election just running to whoever's the change candidate. So that's one thing. Another thing is that the Green Party, they've helped lay the groundwork for what we're doing, very much like the Liberty Party and the Free Soil Party helped lay the groundwork for the breakthrough Republican Party in the 1850s. And so they're kind of the antecedents to us. The first independent abolitionist parties in the 1850s, when we successfully replaced a major party, were actually not the ones that became the major party. And so, when you're looking at history and you're looking at the parallels between how it's been done in the US before, it's like, that's actually following the parallels of how it's been done, before. It's like, that's what you expect to see. There are some parties beforehand, they're not necessarily the breakthrough one. The breakthrough one, what it does successfully is it pulls people, out of the other parties. It does that also, and it brings in talent from the other parties, whether it's candidates or staff and things like that. And then another difference is that we are running as the People's Party, basically, which is kind of a big common denominator and an umbrella that's open to everyone, whereas the Green Party, unfortunately, its name gives people the impression that it's an environmentally focused niche party. And at a time when, this has been a country where people are always focused on things like their basic economic survival, because because you can hardly call it a first world country. And so this is even more pronounced now with coronavirus at a time when, you have up to 28 million, or I've seen, as high as even like 40 million people who could be evicted, when you have millions of people who can't afford food, who are, going to bread lines, you have record child hunger, people are lacking basic needs, and so a party that's going to be successful is going to build itself first and foremost on those basic needs, I think, that people are lacking. And it needs to convey that from the onset. Everything about it needs to convey that we're about taking care of your kind of like fundamental needs. And unfortunately, the Green Party comes across as being more environmentally focused.
Yeah, totally.
So from a tactical perspective, what does the electoral strategy look like for MPP? How are we going to do better than, you know, these other aspiring major parties that preceded us?
We are looking to break through in 4 years, and so there is this idea, I think, out there from people who don't know anything about ballot access or party formation, but it's been drummed into, you know, people's heads, particularly liberals, that it's impossible to start a new party, you know, and that's just not true. It can be done. And I think the best example of this is that the Green Party has an annual budget of about $250,000 to $300,000. And, you know, it's no secret that it's very internally dysfunctional. And yet still with those level, and they have full-time staff equivalent of about 2 or 3 people, you know, on staff. And so that's minuscule, you know, like when you're talking about like party politics in the US, it's absolutely minuscule. And yet with that level of resources and capacity, they're still able to get on the ballot in 48 states, you know, including some write-ins in 2016. So
yeah, this is one of the things that you know, I hear in conversation all the time when I bring up MPP, that, you know, how are you going to get 50 state ballot access? They're going to sue you. They're going to stop you. It can't be done. Well, I think people don't have an understanding of the resources that the Green Party has and how limited it is in that way.
It's possible. Yeah, I mean, like it's like I was on, like we're already having discussions about this. Anybody who's listening, like I was on a call last night. This is we're in October 2020, and we were talking about like we've already gone through all 50 states. We've done a bunch of research on all of them. We're coming up with all the numbers we need. Like it's not like it's gonna take work, and we're gonna run into all sorts of opposition. But like it can totally be done. There are already precedents for this. But we've been talking a lot about Movement for a People's Party and like the vision and everything so far. But we also just kind of want to hang out today a little bit too. And so we'll talk about some less serious things. One thing we were wondering: would you consider yourself the founder or a co-founder of Movement for a People's Party, Nick?
Oh, that's interesting. And so I guess I've always been referred to as the founder because I was the one who wrote that article that kind of started it. And then folks kind of joined me and joined us from there. So I guess I would, but I really kind of do think of myself as like a co-founder, you know, with the other folks who joined originally. It was a Huffington Post article that went viral about starting a new party that I wrote that kicked off Draft Bernie for a People's Party.
You know what? We should probably do this, and this is going to be another basic question, but probably the last basic question. Can you just really quickly go over the Movement for a People's Party kind of platform, some of the policy issues really quick? It doesn't have to be all of them, but I mean maybe the ones that are most I guess the ones that you're thinking about the most or that are most important to you at the moment?
Yeah, these super majority issues.
Yeah, I was going to say spoiler alert.
We can't seem to get done.
Yeah.
It's all these issues that in the you know it's a lot of what Bernie ran on because when we formed our interim platform in 2018, because the final platform is going to be determined at the founding convention next year. But when we formed that platform, we basically just took Bernie's platform from the 2016 campaign, and that became ours. And so you've got, you know, a lot of the staples that he ran on that Sass mentioned. It's like these It's these super majority issues that neither party represents: getting money out of politics, Medicare for all, like a financial transactions tax, and breaking up the big banks. Just new suite of Wall Street regulations. Dramatically decreasing the cost of pharmaceuticals. Ending our system of mass incarceration, legalizing marijuana. Free public college is also there. Free. It's free pre-K to 16. And so you have that as well. So those are a lot of them. Comprehensive immigration reform, and there's a lot more. I'm very proud of the kind of interim platform that we have now. A lot of thought went into it. Then, of course, Bernie's platform was just fantastic, and all these issues have super majority support, and so it's amazing that the two parties don't represent them.
I know. Totally.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Seth.
There's a lot of great things about MPP that we haven't talked about and probably not going to get to today. But one of the things that Nick just said is it's an interim platform. So this isn't covering every single issue. This isn't all People's Party is going to be. People's Party is a party of by and for the people. And we're all having discussions about what should we have on our platform? What do we care about? We have an app where we vote on this stuff, and next year at the founding convention, we're going to all vote together on what the platform should be. We're going to vote on all of our leadership roles, and everybody's allowed to be part of this discussion. You can go to peoplesparty.org/volunteer, sign up, and you can become a part of this discussion, and you can get your voice heard. You can start threads on our forums, all sorts of fun stuff. But yeah, this is for everybody. But let's. Herbie, do you have any fun questions for Nick you want to ask him?
Yeah, sure. The one that came up earlier before we started the interview. What is the best way to cook eggs?
Oh, that is great. Jeez.
Sass
you're not vegan, are you? Is this off limits?
Yeah, good point.
I am not. Gosh, I love them all. Maybe on an egg on a rock in a desert.
That's an unexpected answer. Nice, some art to that one. I like that.
I've always wanted to cook an egg, like in the movies, just like it's so
right
hot.
On the sidewalk.
Oh
yeah, boiling it on it right on the sidewalk or on a rock or something. I
picture like a dinosaur egg for some giant, and it's just like
boiling
on a rock.
Make it a whole feast. It's like an egg buffet.
Exactly. I did have one other. Okay, I really wanted to bring this up because I thought it was one of the most interesting things that you guys were talking about in the post-debate breakdown that you guys did, which again I thought was great, and anybody who finds this should go watch that. You were talking about how so they kept talking over each other. This was a big ongoing gag throughout the debate, and I think it was you who brought up this really interesting thing that's totally true and obvious, which is that they could cut the other person's mic. Like they could time it like 2 minutes for you, cut 2 minutes for you, but they didn't do that, which is like a obvious indication that this is a dramatic, theatrical thing, that they want to be people yelling over each other and they don't want to talk about policies.
It's theater.
It's total theater. So as far as like getting people to focus more on policies, like how do you, because a lot of this is like marketing also, it's like distractions. How do you get people to understand that shouldn't be theatrics, that it shouldn't be a reality show, that what you should be asking from the government and the people who represent you is material change in your life? Like how do you get people to shift from this kind of reality show thinking to hard, solid, material things that actually matter?
Well, I don't even think that you need to shift people necessarily. I think that people are there already. And one of the greatest signs of this was there was a poll conducted after the debate, which asked people, okay, now that you've seen this, Are you more likely to, vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump or neither? And the large majority was neither. And so
57%.
Yeah. And so watching this, and it was like 11% for Trump and like 30%, 32% for Biden. And so watching this, spectacle, this farce, like people know that it's fake. They know, that they're being screwed when they watch that. They know that it's not supposed to work that way. They want something more substantive. So the desire's already there from the people, and you can just imagine. I mean, the two candidates really. I mean, it was just Trump and Biden on that stage, but they spent all night debating the People's Party. They spent all night attacking the left. Mm-hmm. They spent all night attacking Medicare for All, Green New Deal, racial justice. It was just Biden kind of disowning them, Trump attacking them. So people want that already. They want substance. They know that this is theater.
Yeah, and these policies, like the Bernie policies, are pretty mild, right? Like that's the way I think people get a little bit scared when you say like Medicare for all, because they've been so propagandized about this stuff. But like Medicare for all, debt-free college, stuff like this, these are pretty mild policies, right? Like this is not a huge deal.
Yeah, let's talk about how radical the radical left is.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Look, can we all agree this is Antifa trying to do this? They're trying to get people Medicare for all.
Who's getting their George Soros check, right?
It's out of control. We can all agree on
that. I mean, every other country in the world has a version of single payer system, and we don't. That's how radical it is, and like every other country has figured this out, like right to the north. Canada's had it for about 50 years, and they got it through a third party. They got it through an independent party, actually, in a province that passed it in a province in Saskatchewan, and then expanded it nationally. And Medicare for all too. Like I see Medicare for all as the compromise position already. I mean, there's what the UK has, which is a national health service, and what others have, and that's really even better. That's where the entire, national health service is, of course, run by the government, and you create all kinds of, economies of scale and efficiency and reduction of bureaucracy by just fully cutting out the private sector out of that. Medicare for all is not entirely cutting out the private sector, and so it's already there is still a degree of profit. It's like, yes, it's single payer. The government has greater negotiating power with the pharmaceutical companies, the hospitals, and everything. And you're reducing the overhead, and it's a lot better. But still, it's like that's not even the optimal system. And so talking about like how radical it is, no, Medicare for all is the compromise.
Totally. And even though they are compromises, like I think like we were talking about the New Deal coalition thing, I think things like that really would like shift people's everyday lives in the country. If people didn't have to worry about quitting a job because they'd be totally, out of luck for health insurance, or they would be making all their decisions in life based on their college debt and all this stuff. I mean, these are like life-changing things, even though they are really simple, and we see them done in multiple other countries to great success. So I don't know, it's just like a testament to the power of this like propaganda campaign that we've been assaulted with for the past however many decades. So it's kind of crazy. I did want to, before I forget this, I wanted to ask a little bit about, because this is becoming a more like public consciousness issue, which is police, the police, the carceral state, and all this stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that? Because it's a huge and a very important topic. So yeah, can you just give us your overall ideas on the police and all this kind of stuff?
It is, and the origins go back, of course, to the 1970s when, the Nixon administration and Wall Street realized that it had a problem. There was, as they said, actually, there was an excess of democracy in the country, and black people were getting too politically conscious and too aware.
And those hippies, those damn hippies too. Damn
Exactly.
them.
The anti-war protests, it's like people are making demands of us, and we can't tolerate that. They're just supposed to produce for us.
What a concept for a government.
Right, that it's actually representative of the people.
Well, that's not how fundamentally, that's not how they see it. The oligarchs see it the other way around. They think we're there to serve them. It's like, they fundamentally see this in like a feudal way. But what
that's one of the.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was just going to say, the people that are in the Democratic and Republican parties, they're smart folks. They're well educated. They understand what they're doing. Right? And well, yeah, some of them. We don't want to cast a wide blanket over everyone. But and yet our government fails us in all these basic ways. And it has the opportunity to improve our lives, and it doesn't. And the people who are writing legislation are very intelligent. It's really hard to square the two. How do you square the circle and say these are smart people who know what they're doing and they're failing miserably? And it looks a lot like there has to be malice there.
Yeah, they're not failing.
That to happen.
This is exactly what they want. This is one of my favorite ideas. One of my favorite things that I've learned about recently is that they both want to be second place, because when you're the opposition party, you don't have to do any work. All you have to do is yell at the other side, and the donations come rolling in. And it's like that's the whole thing. They know exactly what they're doing. That's why Joe Biden is pushing off, the left and progressives. He doesn't want to win. Why do you think the Democratic Party picked Joe Biden of all candidates to be the representative? Because they want to be second place. That's why they picked him. He was the only one who could have lost to Trump, and that's why they picked him. And I think it's just like, this is a lot of people just it just needs to be said, and when you hear it, you're like, oh my goodness, that makes so much sense.
It's true. It is so much easier to serve like the capitalist class when the people, when you're out of power, because then the people aren't looking to you to do anything for them. And so, and when you are in that position, when you are in power, it's awkward. Like, for example, when Obama had full majorities in 2008, it's awkward. It's awkward in California and all the other states where Democrats have full majorities and they don't pass Medicare for all. It's really awkward, and because it shows they fundamentally don't support it.
That's one of the biggest giveaways, is that super majority just a couple years ago, and nothing happened. Like, what's going on? Yeah,
Exactly.
It's crazy. So I guess this is another thing. This is a little bit off topic, but like, one of the other things that people have been kind of talking about in the debate is this like unwillingness, I guess, for Trump to denounce like far right racist groups and all this kind of stuff. I don't know, there's just this weird, and I agree with you that a lot of this is like, we're seeing history go in a loop where when material conditions start getting bad and people's place in society starts to be more uncertain, that you see like a shift toward fascist ideas and fascist behavior and all that. I just wanted to see, just in a general way, like, what do you think's going on there? Like, obviously there's a whole like racist ecosystem happening right now. Like, what do you think that's totally like a material conditions thing? Do you think that something like a People's Party can like pry people out of that drift toward fascism and stuff? And what would be your, I guess, like, pitch to those people? Or is it just like you think that they're already drawn toward it?
I think that they are already, they would already prefer to support a Bernie Sanders over a Donald Trump, and so when you're talking about kind of like those competing visions, that are populists, that are appealing to like trying to improve working people's lives, there's the Trump vision, of course, that is, that racist vision that immigrants and anybody who isn't white is the problem. And then there's the Bernie Sanders kind of, analysis, the progressive movement's analysis that is that no, it's really just it's corporations and oligarchs and and that is the problem, that we're being held down. So I think that when there was a poll taken in 2016 that showed that if Bernie had been running against Trump instead of Hillary, he would have won by 12 points. And so that to me, and that's like a massive, like historic, like landslide type victory. Like you'd have Bernie winning like Utah and, like all these states that the Republicans have won for like decades.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me is like the contest of ideas right there. People want to support something that is, is our vision. It is inclusive. It is, it does. We do support, of course, racial justice. They want a vision like that over this kind of, Trumpian authoritarianism and xenophobia. And we've seen that already. But the problem is that the establishment doesn't want that other alternative to exist. They know that. They know that they know that Americans prefer the Bernie Sanders, that if you're given the choice between this, racist fascism and, a more kind of social democratic or democratic socialist, society, that people will pick this. And so they've taken the Republican Party and they've transformed it into this fascist party, and the Democratic Party is essentially, this ultra corporatist party. And they don't want any options to exist outside of that, because then, like we've already seen and like they're well aware, people will pick that other option.
Yeah, totally. And, historically, we know where the centrist corporate party, or not the centrist, just the corporate party, where they fall. I mean, given the choice between, a more socialist party and extreme fascism, the corporate party is going to go fascist. Like, that's just like the historical precedent. Okay, so this is like the last question that I have. I just wanted to, I guess there's a lot of, I've had this argument with a couple people about like, there even being any point to voting for Joe Biden. Joe Biden has a horrible record, one of the worst records for a person involved in the government, period. I fall on the side of like, I'm gonna vote for him, but it's such a sad situation where it's like I just feel like I'm voting for maybe the slightly lesser of two evils type situation. I mean, what do you like? I guess my question is just like, like, how sad is that, first of all? And like, what do you say to people who are right now in this situation?
Real quick before Nick goes, are you voting for Biden or are you voting against Trump?
Oh, wait, that's personal. No, go ahead.
No, I actually, I kind of go back and forth, but but like in my position of like speaking for the movement and, for MPP, like I don't share, who like I'm ultimately going to vote for.
Oh, I was referring to Ryan. I was like, all right, like, is it? Yeah,
if you all want to share, I would be fascinated.
Yeah, no, I'm just voting against Trump. I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, just voting against Trump, pretty much. I feel like there's some slight, very slight harm reduction kind of thing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I got my mail-in ballot, so it's not too difficult. So that's what I'm gonna do. But I don't know, Herbie, Sess, do you have any other questions? I have like one more question, and then we have our final amazing wrap-up question.
Yeah, I'm excited for the wrap-up. You don't know what this wrap-up is, Nick. It's great.
I'm excited for that too.
We put a lot of work and thought into this wrap-up question.
You're gonna see just how much thought went into it.
So before we move on to that, I do have one more, serious question. About what's the pitch for conservatives who have basically come to see progressivism and progressives as a bad word. They hear that and immediately they don't want to hear anymore. So how do you get those folks who are traditionally Republicans who have become disenfranchised with Trump's Republican Party, and how do you pull them into MPP?
they can be won over, and it's essential to win them over. And this is one of the key insights and differences between what we're doing and the Green Party, getting to what you asked earlier, which is that when you look at where Americans stand on the issues, they're overwhelmingly progressive, like, the Bernie Sanders platform, all that stuff we talked about, all those policies, Medicare for all, free public college, UBI. Super majorities there. But then when you ask people, how do you self-identify politically? Give yourself a label. What people do, actually, the median in America is center-right. People say, oh, well, I'm conservative, or, I'm moderate. And so the same people who are supporting all of, this kind of Bernie Sanders policies, People's Party policies, are then classifying themselves as conservative or moderate. And so that is one of the key paradoxes and challenges that a new party needs to take on to be successful. And that is the reason why we as MPP are saying that we're running on the issues and not on the labels. Because when you do, just like you said, it's so true. People have been so programmed by our political system, to react to buzzwords and then to automatically say, socialist, progressive, not for me. That's not my thing, But, then you get Bernie Sanders going on Fox town halls or going to very conservative universities like Liberty University and getting cheers from the audiences when he talks about the policies, from the most conservative audiences in the country, handpicked by Fox. And so that is really the key. The key is to focus on the issues and not the ideologies.
Totally. That Fox News town hall thing with Bernie was such a telling thing. People were like, yeah, we're Fox News viewers, but we agree with literally everything this guy's saying. It's just sort of amazing. Okay, there's one last. This will be one of the last questions from me. Is in the post debate thing that I was listening to the other day. You were talking about Citizens United, which is one of the big disasters of recent politics, I guess you could say. Can you talk a little bit about that and how to deal with money in politics and the sort of extreme regulatory capture and just oligarchs trying to buy the government and all this stuff? It's so entrenched and so crazy. I guess can you just tell us a little bit about, I guess, the impact of something like Citizens United?
It is, and tying into the last question too that we talked about is this is one of the main areas where we can build a coalition for a new party, for a people's party, is the desire to get money out of politics. It is the issue that has the highest agreement out of any issue in the country. More than 90%, 93% of people, believe that our elections are bought, basically, and that the wealthy are running them because of money in politics and corporate money. So there's a massive coalition to be built there, basically. But yes, it's a flood of corporate money. They own both political parties. They have their lobbyists on the national committees. They make the decisions. And you cannot be, Bernie Sanders pointed this out too when he ran in 2016. You cannot simultaneously be taking money from Wall Street like Hillary Clinton was and be serving working people. That's just an oxymoron. The interests are fundamentally opposed. And that applies, what we're saying is that applies to candidates, and it also applies to parties, the same principle. And so when a party is flooded and drowning and financed by corporate money, it cannot serve. There's no expectation, no reasonable expectation that it is going to serve working people. And so that's why, as part of our vote at the People's Convention, was the idea that as a bedrock principle, we're forming a major new party that is free of corporate money and influence.
Yeah, totally. It's so funny, the 90%, all these, all these issues, the majority, you can see where the majority's at, and the reality in politics right now is so different than what people want and what people believe. It's crazy. So Sass and Herbie, did you have any last questions, or should we go on to the final question?
I'm just
We're
pumped
ready
for this
to-
wrap up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
Sass,
so much suspense. I'm excited.
you're gonna be so let down by this final. Okay, Sass, you go ahead. You can ask you should ask the final question.
Oh, you want me to ask it?
Yeah.
All right, Nick. Vibe check. How's your vibe?
Yeah. How's your vibe?
I'm doing
Wait a minute.
well. What do you mean by that?
That's the exact aim of the question.
How I'm doing?
It's an
That was the
open-ended.
response we wanted.
It's an open-ended, incredibly stupid question that we're gonna let. It's sort of like a Rorschach test where we vibe check.
You're gonna
And
do it for everyone.
yeah, and you just say whatever you want for the vibe check.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. I'm doing well. I'm invigorated. I'm invigorated by how we're doing. I'm invigorated by like the demand, people joining us, all the hubs we're forming, getting the ballot access stuff down that I know Sass is helping with, it's exciting. It's like, it's very real. And so it feels good.
Hell yeah. And one thing I wanted to say, like when you were talking about the Green Party, I remember the Onion. I don't know if you guys read the Onion headlines, but they were always making fun of the Green Party in the best possible ways, where I think it was always stuff like, there was one for Nader where it was like vote and voter wasted. And it had like a dude who was high just going to vote. But with the movement for a People's Party, like there's none of that. Like this just seems totally like very real and very necessary. Like, plus I think people are paying more attention to politics now because things have gone so crazy, which is almost like, it's like almost like that revolutionary kind of pitch where it's like, okay, now you have to do something kind of situation. So I think it's in a really good place, and really is like totally different than these third parties that people, have historically like kind of written off. So yeah.
Well, let's pass it around. Nick, pick somebody and ask them how their vibe's doing. Ask them for a vibe check.
All right. How about you, Sass? How's your vibe?
I'm vibing, man. I had a busy last couple days, but I got to hang out here with my dog and you guys chilling out. And I've got a good vibe. The sun's shining, coming through. My vibe's on point. I like it.
Like whenever we do these meetings, there's usually some kid heelying, like on Heelys or hoverboards, going by his
Right by
window.
that
Hoverboard.
window.
Yeah.
We didn't see any today, but sometimes there are kids who are hoverboarding across the sidewalk. I don't know if we had any of that in our intro we pre-recorded. But
got a few.
I mean, like, so I didn't have all that noise. But, whatever. It's just kids being kids. But here, Herbie, I'll ask you. How's your vibe?
Vibes are great. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Austin, and work's done for the day. Looking forward to enjoying it after we hang up the phone. Ryan, how's the vibes?
Hell yeah, guys. The vibes are incredibly in tune, I would say. There's like a cosmic vibe happening here. And I'm just trying to take it to that Joe Rogan place so we can get some real listeners. We got to go Joe Rogan if we're going to get listeners, I think. So, yeah.
Right, we are the best podcast in Austin because we had Nick Brana first.
Exactly.
There we go, yeah.
Yeah.
Honored.
Yep. All right. Well, guys, I think that's it. And Nick, I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, this was so awesome. You're so great at talking about this, and I think this is really gonna happen and take off, and I'm super excited too.
Hey, and go on to peoplesparty.org to check out more about Movement for a People's Party. You can sign up just to get some emails. You can sign up to volunteer, which would be fantastic. If you're in Austin, you'll get to work with us and learn more about it. Like Ryan said, thanks for coming on, Nick. We appreciate it. And we're gonna have more episodes. We're gonna invite all sorts of interesting people, former political candidates. We're gonna have on just leaders in the area who are expertise. We're gonna just kind of give them a space to talk about what's important in Austin. So we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
On People's Podcast Austin.
For sure.
Bye bye.
Thanks for inviting me, guys.
All right, so that was Nick Brana with the Movement for a People's Party. If you want to learn more about it, go to peoplesparty.org. Of course, subscribe to this podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever podcast app you listen to. Special thanks to Herbie and, of course, Sass for helping me with that interview. And there'll be more to come. Amazing interviews from all around Austin and all around the world coming soon. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.